this is Abby, and in this video I'm just going to be talking about NIC cages and kind of just about them in general and answering some questions about them. Now first of all, I don't really know what NIC stands for. I don't even know where that came from. A lot of people just call them like wire homemade cages or storage cube cages or even like CNC cages. I think CNC cages are generally talking about guinea pig cages, but anyway, I'm just going to get into talking about a few things of them. So firstly is the base. Now the main part of the base is usually made out of plywood. Now plywood, it can be found at most hardware stores or lumber stores. The cheapest kind you can usually get is the chipwood kind. It is usually around $10 for a half an inch sheet of it. A piece of it is generally sized at 4 feet by 8 feet, though it can vary on your store. Maybe you know somebody that has plywood that you could even get it for free or something. And the only problem that some people have is having it cut. So if you go to somewhere like Home Depot, I think they can cut it for you and they will do that. But if you have the tools at home that like a parent or even you, if you're old enough to use them, then that works as well. And that's pretty much it for the main base of the floor. And then the next part is generally the flooring that goes on top of the plywood. Now you don't have to put a flooring on top of the plywood, but I would definitely recommend it just because if you ever happen to pee or spill water, it would go into the wood and it would kind of mess it up and it would be hard to clean and then it would probably smell over time. So I do think it is good to have a flooring on top of the plywood. Now I would recommend either linoleum flooring or vinyl tiles like what I have. Linoleum flooring would be a little bit harder to do, you'd have to cut it, but I do think it would definitely last longer than the tiles would. Now linoleum flooring you could find at any flooring store or hardware store, and vinyl tiles you can find at like Walmart for pretty cheap and also hardware stores too. The tiles are really easy to install. You just peel off the sticky stuff and place them down nice and firm and flatten them out, and you can just cut them with scissors if you need to cut them as well. A lot of people use tiles just because they're really easy and anyone can do it. So then after the flooring, the last part is the trim. So the trim that I use is a wood called strapping or furring strips. It is really cheap wood that you can find at most any hardware stores if you just ask for it. It's about $2 for 12 feet, which is super cheap. If you wanted to get a little bit nicer or bigger wood, then you would go for like a 1x4 probably. But any pine untreated wood is good for trim. You don't absolutely need trim, but I do recommend it. It helps keep in the mess and fur and stuff, and it does help with the grids. When I'm securing a cage together, I will drill holes in the trim and then zip tie the grids to the trim, and it will keep it nice and secure. And to put the trim on, I just drill up from the bottom of the plywood into the trim. So now I will talk about the grids. The grids are basically these metal grid things that come in sets for organization cubes. I'll have some links down below of where to find them. And there are two different kinds. There are ones that are like 5x5 cubes, and you don't want to buy those just because they're a little bit big squares and your rabbit could get like their head stuck in it if they were small. So I recommend just the 9x9 ones. So you can get grids in mostly black, but you can also find white and silver and even red, blue, yellow and green ones, but I mean I wouldn't want that. Basically all you have to do to the grids is zip tie them together, and that's the last item of a cage. Zip ties are also called cable ties, and all you do is turn them around and then you just pull them and they'll be really tight, and zip ties can hold a ton of weight and they are fairly cheap, and I just think they're the best thing that work for this. Now some people do make cages with the connectors that come with the grids, but I personally hate those things. They break, they snap, they're not as secure as zip ties would be, and they're just really awful. And you can also get zip ties to match your cage color. I have white zip ties on the black grid, so they stand out more and they don't look as good. But black zip ties on a black cage and white zip ties on a white cage would blend in better and it would look a lot better. So yeah, that's basically the main part of the cages. So now I'm just gonna answer some common questions about NIC cages. So the most common question I get or that I have seen is, where do you get the grids? What you have to search for is wire storage cubes. You have to search for that, and you can find them in stores, places like Walmart or Kmart. I personally get mine from usually Bed Bath Bath & Beyond unless I want white ones because they don't sell white ones. And if you want to order online, then just look on Amazon or eBay or the Bed Bath & Beyond website or something like that. Another thing is the cost. How much do they cost? NIC grids can vary, but it's about like $20 for 18 or 19 grids. Sometimes you can find them at thrift stores for a lot cheaper. I make an NIC cage instead of buying a cage. I recommend making a cage like this a lot of the times just because it is a lot cheaper than buying a cage, and you can customize it and make it any size you want. But I do understand that not everybody has the proper tools and stuff to make a cage, but just do whatever is best for you. Another common question I get is, how does the top hold up? So the top just holds up just by the grids itself. It's just like the sides. All you have to do is zip tie the grids together, and that's what I used on the top. It does sink in a little bit, like if you put stuff on it and such, but it does hold itself up pretty well, so that's just how I do it, and it's really easy. And going on something like that is, people ask, how do you hold up the second level if you want a second level? So the second level is generally held up by wooden beams going across, and then that holds it up. I'll try to have a picture if I can, but just having 3 or 4 wooden beams going across, and then you just put the wooden base on top of that. That's what I've done in the past, and it works really well, and I've seen other people do it that way as well. I've also seen people do it the way where they just zip tie grids like it is on the top, and then just laying the wood on top of the grids. I personally don't like this way. I see it as kind of like a waste of grids when you can make it out of like wooden beams and save a lot of money. And also, some people ask, can you buy NIC grid cages already made? And the answer to that is generally no. I haven't seen anywhere that has done that, and if somebody made them pre-made, it would most likely be pretty expensive, but generally they're always just handmade cages. And going on with talking about the second level, if you want a second level, people ask like how you make it, and you just make it the same way you would make a base with plywood, the flooring, and then trim if you wanted, and then you just leave out a hole for a ramp if you're gonna do a ramp, unless you're gonna do some sort of like stairs or something like that. And the last thing that people generally ask is, how much would it cost to make like a good sized cage? Now, to figure out the cost, you'd have to calculate your own things, like find out how much plywood would cost you, and the trim, and some tiles, or whatever flooring, and then the grids and zip ties. So it's fairly easy to calculate how much it would cost. This cage right here, as it stands, it's not done, it's not how I want it quite yet. This is kind of temporary until I get more plywood that I need. By itself, this cage would probably cost like $70, but I already had the grids, so I only spent the money on the base, which cost me around $25. Yeah, and overall they can be a little bit bulky and a little bit difficult to move, but you can take apart all the grids if you need to, and then you just have a base to carry around if you were going to bring it somewhere or move it. But being able to take apart the grids if needed is very, very helpful. Yeah guys, I think that's all I'm going to talk about for this video. Let me know if you like this type of video. I'm just talking about stuff and putting pictures on the screen and videos and such. But if you have any more questions, I can do my best to answer them in the comment section down below. And anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in my next video. Bye!